Did you know CEN Conference has a track fully dedicated to exploring how tech can help achieve the Global Sustainable Development Goals this year? Check out the full Sustainable Societies program here. The 2020 S will have to involve some very big decisions about transport, the UK's most polluting sector. The UK government's response so far has been erratic, choosing to intervene to prevent the collapse of Flybe, Europe's biggest regional airline, and give the green light for the high-speed rail project ISHE. Just stay home or mingle with the brightest minds in tech. On June 18+19 attend CEN. Decarbonizing transport would eliminate 26% of our Colorado emissions that come from how people get around. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson recently said that doing this poses difficult and complicated questions. On this, Johnson is almost certainly right. The Gilets Jaunes protests against fuel duty rise in France show the delicate balancing act between decisive climate action and continued economic growth and convenience. But shouldn't the government allow a regional flight operator to fail and invest in high-speed rail instead? The answer is not so simple. Carbon footprints can be misleading. Aviation is one of the fastest growing fossil fuel consumers, with airlines contributing about 3.5% of all man-made greenhouse gas emissions. This might seem small, but a single transatlantic flight from London to New York can grow your personal carbon footprint by as much as the entire heating budget of the average European. At high altitudes, contrails, the white lines we see in the sky are formed in the wake of aircraft. These high-altitude clouds are too thin to reflect much sunlight, but the ice crystals inside them can trap heat. Unlike the low-level cloud, which has a net cooling effect, contrails contribute significantly to global warming, effectively boosting the aviation industry's share of greenhouse gas emissions to around 4.9%. Flights warm the atmosphere by more than the contribution of their Colorado emissions alone. Shutterstock. For the most part, the environmental benefit of high-speed rail is taken for granted. Most but not all, research suggests that high-speed rail can offset emissions from aviation if it can attract enough passengers from alternative air routes. But the relative climate impacts of aviation to other modes of transport depend on more than just engines and altitude. Read, data centers generate the same amount of carbon emissions as global airlines. We can compare the emissions of different forms of transport by calculating the emissions produced by each one when moving one passenger 1 kilometer. This effectively compares how much Colorado leaves each vehicle's exhaust, but it ignores greenhouse gas emissions from the building and maintenance of the vehicles, the infrastructure such as tracks, runways and airports, and the production of fuel. The warming effects of different greenhouse gases happen over different time periods, from a few days of short intensive warming to centuries of gentle influence. In order to provide a common unit to measure the impact of different gases, warming effects are standardized over a given time period. The time period normally used is 100 years. But if it were 5 years, the effect of contrails would account for more global warming than all the cause in the world. They raise the temperature of the atmosphere, in short, intense bursts. On longer time scales, like 2. You can read full post on Cryptophans News, link available in text below.